everyone, it's Mari here for Honeybee Stamps. Today I'm going to be using the gorgeous Good Tidings stamp set, stencil set, and honey cuts to create my project. This is just a gorgeous grouping of products, including a 6-piece stencil set that coordinates so nicely with this beautiful stamp. So this large pine cone image here with the beautiful pine bough sprigs and the berries is just so gorgeous. And of course, the coordinating die set cuts out all of the images that are included in the stamp set. So to start off my project today, I'm going to take my Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink, and I'm going to just do a lot of inking of this stamp just to get a really, really good stamped image of this gorgeous Good Tidings stamp here. So I have this in my mini MISTI. I'm just going to go ahead and tap and squish on some of that ink, and then I'll just go ahead and get that transferred onto my white cardstock. I am going to use my Be Creative microfiber cloth here to clean my stamp, and what I like to do is just spritz the stamp with some water and then just get into all of those grooves with my cloth. Now I am going to go ahead and use my Altenew grip mat here to help me stencil. And so I have my stamped image and the stencil from the Good Tidings stencil set. Like I said, this is a 6-piece set. And I'm starting off with layer number 1, and I'm just going to do the beautiful pine boughs here. I'm using Pine Needles Distress ink, and I'm trying to just really vary the depth of the color by going darker, closer into the actual pine cones or the base of the needles, and then just going a little bit lighter on the outer edges of those pine needles. Now I'm going in with Twisted Citron, and I'm going to just do the leaves, the holly leaves, with that Twisted Citron. This is just a much brighter green, obviously, so I wanted that contrast of color. And again, in closer to the center or the inside edge, I guess, of the leaves, I'm just making sure that it's a little bit darker. And then as I work out to the tip of the leaf, I'm just using less pressure and less ink just to create a lighter variation in color. So I just wanted this to look a little bit interesting in that way by varying the depth of color with these leaves. So I'm just going in there with a smaller brush for all of these different little areas just to make sure that I can control the ink a little bit better. So now I'm going to use the darker browns, distress inks for the pine cones. Here I'm using Frayed Burlap and ground Espresso. And again, just on that closer to the center of the image, I'm going darker, and then out towards the tips of the pine cones going lighter. So I'm starting with Frayed Burlap, and then I will deepen up the color with the ground Espresso. So you'll just see me blending this out in a clockwise and counterclockwise fashion. And I just want to comment on how easy these stencils are to use. Honeybee does a really great job of their stencils. I love that they're clear, so it's really, really easy to see where you're inking up. And I also like how the whole stencil is etched so that you can really easily line up not only the area that you're going to be stenciling that's open on the stencil, but also the areas that are not open are also etched just to really allow you a really perfect lining it up onto the image. Now the berries, I'm using Kitsch Flamingo and Candied Apple. I'm going in with the base of the Kitsch Flamingo, and then I'll go in with the Candied Apple and just kind of do a little bit of a shading effect in kind of just on some of the sort of the edges. And I am using a much smaller brush here to get into these tinier areas. And I do in many cases blot off the excess ink on a piece of an extra piece of white cardstock just off camera, just to make sure that I don't get too much ink on there. Now this is some texture paste sparkle from Ranger, and what I'm going to do is take the second layer for the holly leaves, and instead of going over that with ink, I'm actually going to just go ahead and go over that area with this texture paste sparkle, and that's just going to add that little bit of sparkle and shine, but it's also going to allow me to use my rock candy glitter over top of it, and then that rock candy glitter is just going to stick to the texture paste sparkle, and when it dries just so nice and dimensional and really, really super sparkly. Now I'm going to take a dark brown Prismacolor pencil, and I'm just going to go in and add some darker color and shadowing on the pine cone. I do apologize that my head is in the frame there in the corner. But I'm just going to show you a little bit of this, not the whole pine cone or the pine cones, because it's just kind of very monotonous to watch. I feel like it's kind of like watching paint dry. But all I did was I just went in where the lines meet the pine cone, and I just went on the underside of that just to create that little bit of depth and darkness on the pine cone. It's very subtle, but it looks quite effective when it's all finished. So now what I'm going to do is take this gorgeous Snowy Pines 3D embossing folder from Honeybee. This is just so stunning. I've used this on another project already here on the Honeybee channel, but I am obsessed with Honeybee's 3D embossing folders. They are so good. And I'm going to size this down so that it is about a half an inch smaller than my card base, my A2 size card base, because I do want to mat this as well. So this is going to be the card front, and it's going to have a pink mat. And I wanted this to be the home for that gorgeous Good Tidings piece that I've already colored. Now this is the Lovely Layers candy cane set. I'm going to use that sprig of pine and the bow for some embellishments for my project. This sweet little bow that I've cut from pink, I'm going to just use a little bit of interference ink from Lisa Horton. This is a really shiny, glistening ink. It's really fun. And I'm going to use Cherry Bomb on the bow. And what this is just going to do is add some shine to the bow. I don't know if you can really see it on camera, but it's a really, really fun ink that just adds that little bit of glimmer to your project. And so die cut the bow out of pink and then just added those little bits of the dark pink accent. And it just looks really nice with those berries that are the pink and the candy apple. Now I'm going to go in with another interference ink. This one is called Magical Garden, and I'm just going to tap some color onto those little spruce sprigs there, those pine boughs, and I'm going to use these as accents on my project as well. I will hold this up, I believe, into the light so that hopefully you can see how shiny this is. They're almost kind of like, I don't know if iridescent's really the right word, but they're definitely really, really super shiny and glimmery. I love these inks so much. They're really fun. You can just add a lot of really cool techniques to your projects. Now this is just a little 1/4 inch circle punch. I actually had this scrap on my table from another project. It's just got a little bit of text gold embossing on it, and I wanted to just add that to the center of my bow, and I am going to use a little bit of gold splatter on this later as another little bit of gold detail. So I'm just going to use my Honeybee glue tube here to adhere that gorgeous 3D embossing piece down onto a piece of pink cardstock. The pink cardstock is cut just a 1/4 of an inch larger than the embossed piece. I've put foam adhesive and now adding some glue onto the back of that, and this pink piece is going to go down onto my A2 size card base. So there you can see we still have that little bit of white margin from the card base and then the layer of the embossing and that pink. I think that just looks really nice. Now I'm going to put some foam adhesive on the back of the Good Tidings stamped image here, and I'll go ahead and get that stuck down. Of course, this image is meant to sort of like go up against an edge because that the right side of the image does sort of like have a flat side. So it just sort of is perfect for putting along the side of your project. So I've popped that up now, and now I'm going to start to add some of the embellishments. So with the little bow, I'm going to add that little circle with some foam adhesive to the center of the bow. And then I'll also add a little bit of foam adhesive on the back. So that bow is going to be quite dimensional on top of the pine cones there. Just going to use my Honeybee tweezers here to place that onto the pine cones. And I just love how those berries are still poking out in the background. That looks really nice. Now I'm just going to give my little pine boughs here a little haircut, and I'm just going to place them in and around my gorgeous stamped image here. And this is just going to add a little bit of extra texture to the card, which this is definitely a textured and dimensional card for sure, which I love. And I know that one of my kids are probably going to pick this card for their Christmas card collection to give out to their friends. I'm going to just take some anti-static powder and add that to my white cardstock, and then I'll take my Honeybee Stamps clear embossing ink. I'll ink up the sentiment that I'm going to be using from Good Tidings here. The sentiments in that set are so beautiful, and I'm just going to cover that now with some gold embossing powder, and then I'll take my heat tool to that and melt it. And it's just going to be really, really pretty. Just a beautiful sentiment for the front of this card. So definitely going for some gold accents on this project. Have yourself a merry little Christmas is the sentiment. I'm just going to cool that off a little bit before I go ahead and add the dye to it. And of course, in true Honeybee style, the Good Tidings set does have coordinating dyes for all of the different sentiments that are part of that set. I'm going to add a little bit of foam adhesive onto the back of the sentiment and then add it just down to the bottom right corner. And that's going to finish off most of the card, although I just couldn't resist adding a little bit of gold splatter. Friends, I have linked up in the description box below to all of the different products that I've used for my project today. I'm absolutely in love with the Good Tidings collection. If you haven't picked this up yet, make sure that you give it a look. It is a really, really gorgeous set, and I think that there's parts of it, elements of it, that you could definitely use for different seasons of the year. Love it so much. Thanks so much for joining me today. Please make sure that you give this video a thumbs up, that you subscribe, and make sure you leave a comment on this video. Have an amazing day, friends, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.